The first time Commander Valtor saw Marcus Nolan laugh was right after the orbital railgun sheared the top off the United Nations' last functioning command center. The control room on the alien dreadnought, 15 kilometers wide and drifting just beyond the atmosphere, fell into a stunned silence. On the view screen, the Earth-based structure 6 stories of reinforced alloy and ceramic shielding vanished in a bloom of white fire. The camera feed trembled, then cut to static. Valtor turned, his segmented eyes narrowing. "Why is the human convulsing?" Marcus, bruised and caked in soot, sat slouched in the corner of the observation cell. His left arm hung limp in a makeshift sling fashioned from a torn uniform sleeve. Blood had dried along the side of his neck. He stared up at the ceiling, laughing, not manic or mocking, but something quieter, weary, unbelievable, tired, and still amused. Valtor stepped closer. "Is this a symptom of psychological collapse?" Marcus coughed, then winced. "Nah. You guys just blew up the last hope Earth had of mounting a defense. It's hilarious in a real we're so screwed kind of way. You find extinction amusing?" Marcus looked straight at him. "You ever watch a building fall in slow motion? The moment before it hits the ground, there's this second where you realize it's going to crumble no matter what. And you just," he chuckled again, then winced and held his ribs. "You just laugh, because what else is left?" Valtor turned to the internal medic drone. "Scan him. Neural integrity, emotional centers, motor functions." The drone hovered over Marcus, humming softly. A blue light passed over his skull. "Everything's working," Marcus said, narrowing his eyes. "Don't bother trying to fix me." "You are injured," Valtor said. "Ribs, left wrists probably broken. Took a beam to the shoulder when your boarding bots hit our bunker. But hey, still breathing." Valtor didn't understand. The human had no leverage, no resources, and almost certainly no backup. Yet he behaved as though he still had control. The door behind Valtor hissed open. High strategist Kevel entered, her translucent skin catching the dim lights of the dreadnought's command corridor. She regarded Marcus with detached curiosity. "This is the resistance commander you captured?" Valtor gave a subtle nod. "He led the last functioning Earth defense cell." Marcus raised 2 fingers in a mock salute. "Marcus Nolan, Grandmaster of the Gloriously Doomed." "He is laughing," Kevel observed. "Yes," Valtor said. Repeatedly, Kevel frowned. "Why?" Marcus leaned his head back against the wall. "Because I've got nothing else, lady. You blew up my house, my friends, and my last sandwich. So either I give up and die whimpering, or I laugh at the fact that I still have to deal with your face every morning now." Kevel turned away. "He is broken." "I'm still talking," Marcus called after her. "Broken people don't still crack jokes." But Kevel waved a dismissive hand and retreated down the corridor. Valtor remained behind, watching Marcus through the reinforced glass. "You're not broken," Valtor said. "But you are irrational." "Try being rational when you've lost 80% of your planet," Marcus said. "You start finding sanity in weird places." Valtor hesitated. "You are not afraid?" "Oh, I'm terrified," Marcus said, "but fear's just the opening act. You sit with it long enough, it gets boring. You start wondering what absurdity comes next." Valtor studied him a moment longer, then turned and left without another word. 3 days later, Marcus collapsed in the holding cell. The drone monitoring his vitals shrieked a warning, summoning 2 guards and a field medic. His fever had spiked. Infection had set in from untreated shrapnel embedded near his shoulder blade. They kept him in the medbay for 6 days. He didn't laugh once. He groaned during the first debridement, cursed during the second, and passed out during the third. The wrist was indeed broken. The ribs were bruised but not fractured. His shoulder wall required internal stitching. He couldn't lift his arm for nearly a week. Valtor visited on the 8th day. "You are healing," he said. Marcus nodded weakly. "Slowly. You are not laughing. Give me something funny and I might." Valtor watched in silence for a moment. "Your world is dying. We have eliminated your governments, scattered your armies, and vaporized your orbital defenses. The next phase begins in 3 cycles. Still, your people resist. Why? Marcus blinked at him. Because it's ours, because we don't know how to stop. Valtor tilted his head. That is not logical. Nope, Marcus said, but it's very human. 2 weeks passed. Marcus began walking again. The medics allowed him limited movement in the station's lower corridors under supervision. He examined alien terminals, touched strange materials, and made jokes the guards didn't understand. One morning, he sat on the edge of a viewing platform overlooking Earth's northern hemisphere, now scorched brown and black in wide swaths. Valtor stood beside him. That continent used to feed over 1 billion of your kind, Valtor said. Marcus stared down. Yeah. Gone now? You're not laughing, Marcus exhaled. It's harder when you're reminded of what's lost. Yet you still resist. Marcus gave him a sideways glance. You ever see a car going over a cliff and the driver's still honking the horn? It makes no sense, but maybe it's not about sense. Maybe it's about not going out silent. Valtor didn't respond. The next assault came on a Tuesday. A human strike team, battered and half-starved, breached the dreadnought's lower decks using stolen alien tech. They moved fast, too fast. 2 were killed in the first exchange. The third, a young woman named Kara Velen, reached Marcus's cell, broke the lock, and pulled him out with one arm over her shoulder. You're not strong enough to walk, she said. I'm fine, Marcus lied through clenched teeth. Just point me toward the escape pod. They didn't make it. The alarm blared, doors sealed. The ship shifted trajectory and accelerated. Kara shoved Marcus into a maintenance shaft, crouching beside him. They'll find us in minutes. Marcus looked at her, then laughed, once dry and quiet. What's so funny? She whispered. He grinned, eyes tired. I just remembered I left my jacket in the medbay. She stared at him. Seriously? It was a good jacket. A moment later, a hatch above them opened. Valtor dropped in, weapon drawn. Kara raised her sidearm, but Marcus stopped her. Wait. Valtor looked between them. You are escaping. Trying, Marcus said. You are injured again. I'm consistent. Valtor didn't shoot. Instead, he lowered the weapon. I do not understand you. Marcus looked up at him. Get in line. Valtor reached into a pouch and pulled out a data chip. This contains coordinates. A safe zone. There are others like you, resisting. I should not give this to you. But you are, Marcus said. Valtor hesitated, then placed the chip in Marcus's hand. Why? Kara asked. Valtor met her gaze. Because he will laugh again. And I must understand why. Valtor stepped back and shut the hatch. Hours later, Marcus and Kara reached a launch bay. They stole a scout pod and burned toward Earth's upper atmosphere. They landed hard in what used to be northern Canada. Marcus dislocated his shoulder on impact. Kara dragged him from the wreckage. 3 days later, he stood in the middle of a frozen valley where 3 dozen survivors camped in the ruins of an old research station. He raised the beacon Valtor had given him and transmitted the coordinates. Within a week, more arrived. The resistance grew. And one night, as a transmission came in that another dreadnought had been sabotaged from within by a defecting alien engineer, Marcus laughed again. Not loudly, not mockingly. Just a single, disbelieving chuckle. Kara turned to him. What now? Marcus pulled his jacket tighter around his injured arm. Now we see how many more times we can make them wonder why we're still laughing. And somewhere in orbit, Commander Valtor stood at a monitor watching. He still didn't understand, but he wanted to. The snow had stopped 3 hours ago. The valley looked less like a war zone and more like a half-forgotten story, white draped over broken antennae, half-buried solar panels, and the rusting carcass of a downed survey drone. Marcus sat on a crate outside the main shelter, his right arm bundled in a sling fashioned from thermal lining, his breath fogging in the cold. Kara crouched nearby, poking at a battered heater that coughed more than it hummed. You ever think about how dumb this all is? She said, not looking up. All the time, Marcus replied. But then I remember, dumb things are kind of our specialty. The heater made a sound like an apologetic sneeze. Kara smacked it with a length of pipe. A puff of warmth escaped, followed by a smell that suggested something inside had recently died. You sure that's not venting coolant? Marcus asked. Nope, but if it is, we'll die slightly warmer. She stood, brushing ice from her sleeves. You should be inside, cold's not good for your shoulder. I've got a theory, Marcus said. If I irritate the injury enough, maybe the pain will cancel itself out. That's not how bodies work. Have you met mine? She gave a small shrug, then walked off toward the mess tent, leaving him with the heater, the wind, and the crunch of boots on frostbitten gravel. Another pair of footsteps approached from the other side of the outpost, lighter, more deliberate, not human. I thought you would be inside, said a voice that clicked faintly at the end of each word. Marcus didn't turn. You thought wrong. Valtor stepped into view, his exosuit adjusted for the cold with overlapping plates that shimmered faintly violet in the dim light. He carried something under one arm, small, metallic, with a faint pulse at its center. Your signal reached farther than expected, Valtor said. 14 resistance nodes responded. Marcus leaned back, wincing slightly. And you're here to celebrate. No, I am here because I do not know what you will do next, and that concerns me. That makes two of us. Valtor placed the device on the crate beside Marcus. This is a communications repeater. My people use it to coordinate planetary sweeps. You can repurpose it. I'm touched. You bring one for all your prisoners. You are not a prisoner. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's a hell of a promotion. Valtor didn't respond. Instead, he tapped the repeater with one elongated finger. You told me once that humans find sanity in strange places. I did. Then where are you finding it now? Marcus tilted his head back, watching the overcast sky. Somewhere between the fourth time I dislocated this shoulder and the moment I realized we'd started growing potatoes in old ammunition crates. Valtor looked toward the makeshift greenhouse. That is inefficient. So is hope. Doesn't stop us. There was a long pause. The wind scraped across the camp, rattling a loose panel above the entry tunnel. Your species should not have survived this long, Valtor said. You lack the cohesion, the infrastructure, the predictive models. And yet, Marcus said, gesturing broadly at the snow, the flickering lights, the faint sound of someone cursing at a frozen water pump. We're still here. Valtor studied him. I would like to observe your methods. Marcus laughed once, more air than sound. You're serious? Yes. You want to study how we're failing less quickly? I want to understand why your failure is not yet complete. Marcus stood slowly, biting back a hiss as his arm shifted. He picked up the repeater. Fine. But you help fix the water pump first. Valtor followed him toward the utility shed without another word. 2 days later, the camp had heat in 3 more shelters. The water pump worked again, although the taste still resembled wet pennies. Marcus spent most of the time in a canvas tent converted into a planning room, surrounded by maps, salvaged screens, and the occasional curse whenever the power flickered. Valtor stood silently in the corner, watching. You don't sleep, do you? Marcus asked, not looking up from a cracked datapad. My rest cycles do not align with your circadian rhythm. That's a long-winded no. You are redrawing deployment zones. Marcus nodded. We picked up a frequency shift 3 hours ago. They're moving their patrols east. Might be prepping an atmospheric drop. Then you should evacuate. We don't do that. Valtor approached the table. Even when your location is known, we move supplies. We scatter personnel, but we don't vanish. That's when people start believing the fight's over. Valtor touched the edge of the map. This position has no strategic value. It has symbolic value. Valtor paused. Symbols are inefficient, so is poetry. Doesn't mean it's not worth writing. An alarm chirped softly. Marcus glanced at the display. Scanners picked something up, he muttered. Seismic tremors, small, could be a tunneling drone. Valtor straightened. You are targeted again, more like, gently nudged outside. The wind had picked up. Kara entered without knocking, dragging a scoped rifle slung over her shoulder. She nodded at Marcus, then gave Valtor a look that wasn't quite hostile but hovered near it. We've got eyes on movement about 4 clicks north, she said. Can't tell if it's a scout or a decoy. Marcus tapped the repeater. Let's find out. The next hour was a blur of motion, hastily assembled recon teams, hushed radio chatter, and the low hum of repurposed drones lifting off. Marcus stayed in the command tent, watching the feeds with one hand pressed against his ribs. The pain had migrated from a dull throb to a more persistent stab each time he turned too quickly. Valtor hovered near the rear monitors. "Your drones are slow. They're patched together from lawnmowers and toaster parts," Marcus said. "Be amazed they fly at all." The screen flickered. A grainy image resolved, a single alien scout vehicle half buried under camouflage netting, no movement nearby. "It's alone," Kara's voice crackled over the speaker. "No escort, could be bait." Marcus hesitated. "Pull back, flag it for later." "Copy that." The feed cut. Valtor said nothing, but Marcus could feel the question forming. "Why not engage?" Valtor asked finally. "Because the last time we chased a lonely scout, we lost 9 people in an ambush. We're not here to win every fight, just the ones that matter." Outside, the wind dropped. Later that night, Marcus sat by the greenhouse, watching the condensation form on the inside of the glass. Rows of stunted potatoes and hardy greens clung to life beneath the grow lights. Kara sat beside him, arms crossed against the cold. "You really trust him?" she asked. "I don't trust anyone," Marcus said. "But he hasn't tried to kill me in the last week, and that's a better track record than most. He watches everything you do." "That's the point," she frowned. "Explain." Marcus knocked a small clump of ice off his boot. "He's trying to figure out why we're not gone yet. If he gets close enough to the answer, maybe he stops helping the people trying to erase us." Kara stared through the glass. "And if he doesn't, then we make sure he still sees us laughing while the world burns." She didn't respond. Hours later, after the camp had gone quiet, Marcus limped back to the command tent. He knew Valtor wouldn't be there. He had taken to walking the perimeter during the late hours. Probably cataloging rust. Marcus sat heavily in the chair, pulling a thermal blanket over his legs. His shoulder ached. His ribs felt like they were being played like a xylophone by a drunk insect. The pain was familiar now. He didn't fight it anymore. He just folded it into the background noise. On the nearby monitor, a message blinked. One of the relay signals had picked up interference. Nothing urgent. Just static with a pattern. Marcus leaned closer. The pattern repeated 3 times, then stopped. He smiled faintly. A poem in Morse, probably someone else, somewhere, still holding the line, still writing verses while the sky cracked open. He closed his eyes and let out one short, breathless laugh. Then he got up and went to write a reply. The wind had shifted again by morning, slicing in from the southeast and bringing with it a fine, stinging grit that clung to the skin and seeped into the joints of equipment. Visibility dropped enough that Kara called off the perimeter checks. The camp hunkered down. Power was rationed to the greenhouses and the med bay. Marcus sat in the operations tent, still wrapped in layers, watching the soft static of dormant screens. He held a mug of something almost like coffee, the warmth doing more to soothe his bones than the taste. Valtor entered without ceremony. He ducked slightly under the lintel, his outer armor dulled by frost. Without speaking, he placed an object on the table, a blackened hand-sized core, scorched at one end, still ticking faintly. "That came from the scout vehicle," he said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You went back out there." There was a gap in the storm. "I recovered it alone." Risky move for someone not trying to pick a side. Valtor didn't respond. He pulled a chair away from the wall and sat, his joints settling with a soft mechanical hiss. Marcus sipped from his mug. "Let me guess, it's a relay beacon." "A trap trigger," Valtor corrected. "Would have activated a long-range strike if approached by more than 2 human heart signatures. Likely would have leveled this camp." Marcus nodded slowly. "So your people are counting our heartbeats now. Charming. They adapt. Not fast enough." Valtor regarded him across the table. "You seemed unwell last night." Marcus set the mug down. "You watching me sleep now? Your breathing was uneven. I heard you coughing through the wall." Marcus flexed his fingers slowly. "Lungs holding, just some residual fluid. Kara drained it last week. You are not cleared for activity. Marcus leaned forward, wincing slightly. If I wait to be cleared, I'll be dead before someone hands me a clipboard. He coughed once more and wiped his mouth with the back of his glove. A faint smear of red followed. Valtor's gaze narrowed. You are hemorrhaging internally. Not enough to stop me from finishing this, Marcus said, turning the blackened core over in his hand. You should rest. No time. You will die. Marcus exhaled slowly through his nose. Eventually, they sat in silence for a long minute. Outside, something metal clattered against the wind-blown scaffolding. The heater let out a low groan and clicked off. The temperature dropped almost immediately. Valtor stood, adjusted a panel, and struck the side of the unit. The heater restarted with a reluctant whir. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You just fixed that with a punch. I observed Kara do the same yesterday. I'm surrounded by geniuses. Valtor returned to his seat. Your injury. You said it's not enough to stop you. It hurts when I breathe too deep, Marcus admitted, but I've got antibiotics and Kara's watching for infection. I'm not dying today. No one here is qualified to treat a collapsed lung. Didn't collapse, Marcus said, just bruised. Fluid got in during the last bombardment. I got lucky. Valtor tilted his head. You consider this fortunate, Marcus smiled faintly. I'm still upright. In our line of work, that's the gold standard. Valtor looked past him, toward the inner wall of the tent where a tattered corkboard held a mess of papers, maps, and hand-scribbled notes. You taught the others how to build signal traps. Had to. We lose engineers faster than we train them. You are not an engineer. I am now. Valtor's gaze lingered on the board. Your species reassigns roles without adequate retraining. Marcus shrugged with his good shoulder. We've had to make do. Our medic was a dentist before the invasion. Now she's doing minor surgeries with a flashlight and a bottle of vodka. Valtor looked back at him. And you continue to function under these conditions. Barely, but we're learning fast. Valtor stood and crossed to the board. He traced a finger across the red thread connecting two locations. This path. It leads through a canyon system. Why would you route supplies through a geographic choke point? Because the enemy doesn't expect us to be that stupid. Valtor turned. That is not a viable strategy. It is when you're desperate enough to use it exactly once. He studied Marcus for a long time. You gamble with your lives. Every day, you do not have the numbers to afford such losses. Marcus leaned back in his chair. We never did. Valtor returned to the table and sat again. Then why do your people follow you? Marcus didn't answer immediately. He looked down at his hand, still stained faintly red. Because I don't give them a happy ending, just a chance to write their own last sentence. Valtor was silent. The storm began to subside by early evening. The wind quieted, and the grit settled into a thin crust along the tents and walkways. Kara returned from the greenhouse with 2 buckets of thawed water and a patchy report on the seedlings. Marcus sat outside again, watching the western sky turn amber. Valtor joined him without a word, bringing a portable emitter that projected a low shield against the cold. You're not obligated to stay, Marcus said. I am not here out of obligation. That's new. Valtor looked toward the horizon. The high strategist believes you are delaying the inevitable, that this resistance will dissolve when your resources collapse. She's not wrong. And yet you continue, Marcus nodded. Because I'd rather burn the last of what we have doing something that matters than survive doing nothing. Valtor looked back at him. You know you cannot win. I know we might outlast the part of your people that care. There was a pause. Valtor reached into a side pouch and drew out a small metal disc. He placed it on the crate between them. It unfolded with a soft click into a flat panel, displaying a network map of underground tunnels, hidden caches, and old transit routes. Marcus stared. That's from the Central Archive. It is accurate as of 4 cycles ago. You're handing me your playbook. I am giving you an option. Marcus picked it up slowly. Why? Valtor considered this. Because I have watched you breathe through blood, crawl through ash, and joke in the wake of annihilation. I do not understand your people, but I have begun to recognize the shape of your madness. Marcus traced a single line on the map. Madness is what you call it when something doesn't fit your logic. Then you are illogical. Maybe, Valtor gestured to the panel. If you use this, you will survive longer, but it will not guarantee success. Nothing does. Then why do it? Marcus looked up at him. Because it means someone else might not have to. They sat together as the sky darkened. No alarms, no transmissions, no threats. Just wind and the soft hum of the emitter. Later that night, Marcus handed the panel to Kara and instructed her to begin rerouting the next 3 convoys. She didn't question him. They worked in silence, moving pins and drawing new lines. At dawn, the first team departed. By midday, the camp was quiet again. Marcus sat alone in the operations tent, lungs aching, shoulders stiff. He stared at the last message from the network, just a single word, repeated once, alive. He leaned back, eyes closed, and laughed softly. Valtor stood outside, listening. Not confused, not alarmed, just listening. And finally, understanding.